Welcome to Stayf Draws. I'm Stayf from the group A Dutch Artist, but you can call me Stayf. I'm going to do a review about a book, and the book is called They Drew as They Pleased, The Hidden Art of Disney's Mid-Century Era. It's the fourth book in the series They Drew as They Pleased. I've made videos about all of the books in the series. I will leave links in the description. They Drew as They Pleased, The Hidden Art of Disney's Mid-Century Era, the 1950s and 1960s, is the fourth volume in the series of books. It's written by Didier Ghez and has a foreword by Eric and Susan Goldberg. The book has 224 pages and was published in 2018 by Chronicle Books. This is the EPUB version I bought on Apple Books. Unfortunately, the book is not available anymore as an EPUB. The big advantage of an ebook is that you can zoom in onto the pictures and look for certain artists in the search bar. This book focuses on the 1950s and 1960s, a time that the style of illustration and also the style of the Disney movies changed dramatically. In the 1950s, movies such as Cinderella, Alice in Wonderland, Peter Pan, Lady and the Tramp and Sleeping Beauty were made. In the 1960s, 101 Dalmatians, The Sword in the Stone and Jungle Book were released. In the 50s, another studio called UPA made very modern animations and Disney movies were considered old-fashioned. Walt Disney hired new talent to be in demand. He was the first one to embrace the small screen and produce animation for TV. He hired new blood to keep up with the time. The change in style was also a financial one. The artists featured are Blair, Mary Blair, Tom Oreb, John Dunn and Walt Peregoy. Somehow Ivan Earl is not in this book. But there's a great book about him, Awakening Beauty, The Art of Ivan Earl. I made a book review about that book, and I will leave a link below this video. The book actually starts in the 1930s with Blair, the husband of Mary Blair. Didier Ghez could not leave out Blair because they influenced each other. He was born in 1911 and started out as a renowned watercolor artist. Together with his wife, they were part of the influential Californian School of Watercolor. But in the 1930s, life was hard on everyone, especially artists. He got married to Mary in 1934 and he needed a steady income. He first started working for a by Work studio as an in-betweener on the Flip the Frog cartoons, and later as an animation assistant for Harman and Ising. Lee really wanted to be an animator, the same as his older brother Preston Blair. But at Harman and Ising they wanted him to do color keys for the animation. The first Walt Disney cartoon he worked on was the Silly Symphony Merbabies in 1937. Harman and Ising had a contract with MGM that was not renewed. Walt Disney wanted to help out his former employees Hugh Harman and Rudy Ising by letting them produce the cartoon. Dave Hand from the Disney Studios came over to check on the progress and discovered the talents of Blair. In 1938, Blair started working at the Disney Studios as a color supervisor for Pinocchio. After that he worked on Fantasia together with James Bodrero on the Dance of the Hour sequence and the Pastoral Symphony. He also worked on Toccata and Fugue in D minor. In 1941, Lee and his wife were invited to go on a goodwill trip together with Walt Disney. From this trip 2 movies were made, Saludos Amigos and The Three Caballeros. In the documentary South of the Border with Disney from 1942, you can see him at work. His favorite sequence he worked on was Aquarello do Brasil. It's also my favorite scene from Saludos Amigos. By the end of 1942 he left the Disney Studios and joined the Navy. After that, Lee and his wife moved to the East Coast and worked as freelance artists. In 1968 they returned to California. He taught figure and landscape painting. He passed away in 1993. Mary Blair may be the most iconic Disney visual artist. I've made several videos about her and art books that are published. I will leave links to those videos in the description. Didier Ghez somehow found art of Mary Blair that was not published before. Mary Blair was born in 1911. She started art at the Chouinard School of Arts and was a fine watercolorist. Her work was exhibited in museums. To pay the bills, she worked as an opaquer at the Up-I Works paint department. After her husband left the harmonizing studio, Mary replaced him to work as a color designer. She really didn't like working in animation, but her husband convinced her to start working at the Disney studios. In 1940, she worked briefly at the studio on story sketches for Dumbo and Lady. In 1941, she left the studio to work on her own art. But a few months later, her husband was invited to go on a trip to South America with Walt Disney. She also wanted to go and asked Walt Disney if she could join. This changed her whole career. On that trip, she started to paint with more opaque paint and developed her style that we now all love. She made concepts for the movie Song of the South and for Melody Time story sketches for Blame It on the Samba. In 1946 she left the studio and moved to New York together with her husband to work as a freelancer. Walt Disney still hired her to work remotely on preliminary art for Cinderella. Here you can see some wonderful pieces of art I've never seen before. She also worked on Alice in Wonderland, and her style was more apparent in that movie. Blair also worked on concepts for Peter Pan and the shorts The Little House, Susie, and The Little Blue Coupe. She left the Walt Disney Studios again in 1953 to work as a freelance artist. She died in 1978. I'm very excited about the next artist, Tom Oreb. There has not been written a lot about this amazing artist. I first came across his work in the book Cartoon Modern by Ahmed Amidi. Tom Oreb brought modernism to the studio. He was born in Los Angeles in 1913. He studied art at Manual Arts for a short period, the same school Jackson Pollock attended. He joined the Disney Studios in 1936 and was an in-betweener on Snow White. He became an animation assistant to Ward Kimball on Pinocchio, Fantasia, and Dumbo. Oreb made these funny character designs of Kimball and of himself. Also with Salvador Dali, that worked at the studio for a short period. In 1945 he joined the story department. The first sequence he worked on was All the Cats Join from Make Mine Music. 1 year later he would work on storyboards for the features Fun and Fancy Free, Wind in the Willows, and The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad. All of these designs were still old school. In the late 1940s he started to design characters with more angular shapes. For Cinderella he made designs of the stepsister and Lucifer the cat and the hens. For Alice in Wonderland he did storyboards and character designs. His design for the Mad Hatter came close to the final design that ended up in the movie. 1948 wasn't a good financial year for the Disney Studios and a lot of artists lost their jobs. Also Tom Oreb. He started working at MGM for Tex Avery. In 1952, Oreb was back at the Disney Studios to work on Toot, Whistle, Plunk and Boom, that won an Academy Award in 1953. In 1954, Disney asked Oreb to work on some commercials and redesign Disney characters in a modern style. Alice and the Mad Hatter and the fairy from Cinderella all got the Oreb look. Also, Mickey Mouse got a redesign. He made character designs for Paul Bunyan and later character designs for 101 Dalmatians. Apart from being a great designer, Tom Oreb also was unreliable and temperamental. In 1959, he got fired at the Disney Studios and started working at UPA. Another unknown artist that worked at the Disney Studios was the Scot John Dunn. In 1951, he was hired at the Disney Studios as an in-betweener. Trained as an illustrator, he soon began to make story sketches. In 1954, the Walt Disney Studios signed a deal with ABC to do a weekly show called Disneyland to promote the theme park. Walt Disney asked animator Walt Kimball to set up an animation division for the production for the World of Tomorrow episodes, which was later called Tomorrowland. The specials were 50 minutes and it was a combination of live action and animation. 5 episodes were scheduled. The mission was to educate about the future, but in an entertaining way. John Dunn joined the team and made story sketches for the first episode, A Trip to Mars. In 1954, he worked on visuals and concepts for Man in Space, Man in the Moon, and Mars and Beyond. His story sketches showed a zany kind of humor Walt Kimball was famous for, but they actually were Dunn's ideas. The style of these animation segments were in a modern style. If you look on YouTube, you can find some episodes. They were also included in the DVD set Walt Disney Treasures Tomorrowland in Space. John Dunn also worked on storyboards for Donald Duck shorts. In 1959, the Kimball TV unit was disbanded, and Dunn left the studio. I'm never afraid of a blank piece of paper. It's always an opportunity. I love blank pieces of paper. These are the words of artist Walt Peregoy, an artist with a big ego and a talent to match it. As most Disney artists, he started out as an in-betweener in 1943. When he was just 17 years old. But he left the studio to study art in Mexico and France. In 1951 he was back in Los Angeles and started working as an in-betweener at Disney again. He worked on in-betweens for Peter Pan and Lady and the Tramp. But his dream was to work at the layout and background department. Ivan Earle, who was working on the backgrounds of Sleeping Beauty, hired Peregoy to paint in his style. In this documentary you can see Walt Peregoy together with Ivan Earle.
This is Walt Peregoy, who is an artist with a very distinctive style of his own which is entirely different from Ivan's.
But I had to forego my normal manner of painting because all the scenes of an animated film must be kept consistent in appearance. So like all the other background artists, I looked to Ivan to help me keep my background paintings in line with the established style of the picture.
He also worked on backgrounds for Paul Bunyan and concepts for Disneyland. He was always drawing and painting. In the late 50s, Peregoy finally got the opportunity to show his true talent when he was asked to handle the background styling on 101 Dalmatians. His unmatched feel for color and design made 101 Dalmatians one of the most modern animation features. He worked with angular shapes and painted outside the lines. The background's pencil drawings were xeroxed on cells and laid over the background paintings, creating a unique modern look. In this book you can see the concept paintings he made without the pencils. However, Walt Disney didn't like this look. Peregoy had to tone down his style for the other movies he worked on. He worked on the styling and the backgrounds for Sword in the Stone. For Jungle Book he also made concept designs. In the 60s he worked on several projects that were shelved. Peregoy left the studio in 1965. They drew as they pleased the hidden art of Disney mid-century era, the 1950s and 1960s, is available on Amazon. I will leave links below this video. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you like it, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't already, and don't forget to hit that notification bell, because each time I upload a new video, you get a notification. If you want to see all of the other books in the series, I did reviews of all of the books. I'll leave links below this video. Drawing is fun, and practice makes perfect. See you next time. Doodles!